Okay, so it came up in one of the critiques that using the AI standard surface shader, everything looks smooth and shiny. Um, and so then how do you do things like fur or rock? And the answer is you still use the same shader, but you either the geometry is much more complex or the textures being plugged into the shader are much more complex. Up until this point, if I just look at the standard surface, we are just fiddling along with these numbers. But every single one of these checkboxes can be another texture or some kind of mechanism that controls things. These are all like things that you can plug more complexity into, basically. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add complexity to geometry, and then in the next demo, I'm going to add complexity with the shaders, with the textures that plug into the shader. All right, so I have a very simple scene here. It's just a curve and a camera. And I'm going to create a cylinder because I want round ends. And so for this cylinder, I'll add round caps. I'm going to add a little detail. I'm going to add some detail on the height. And then I'm going to select my curve. Whoops. My curve here, deform. All right, and now, as I change the length of my cylinder, I can have it go along the length of my shape here. And I'm gonna control, if you command scrub right here, you can have a little more fine control over the numbers because I don't like that little crinkling that happens at the end. And I'm gonna add some more detail so it's nice and smooth. Okay, so now I need to add some fur, and fur you can think of maybe in an overly simplistic way as a bunch of little tubes that are connected to an underlying mesh. So when we're dealing with large numbers of things in Maya, we're usually in one of two places, either Mash or Bifrost. Bifrost gives you a lot more control and can handle a lot more complexity. And this is more than a class worth of content to actually, to really understand what's going on in Bifrost. But I'm just going to kind of go through this quickly. It's basically to demonstrate that it's still the same shader. That's basically what these videos are, and to answer a question. So I brought in my mesh, and then I'm going to scatter some points on here. I'll plug in my geometry, output my points. And there should be some little points on there. They might be a little hard to see. There we go. I can see them a little better. Now that they're big, maybe I'll make them a little smaller. And I'll change the background. Okay, so now there's a bunch of little points on my mesh, and by default they're set to random. However, to get a nicer result that still looks kind of organic, we're going to shift it to blue noise. And what blue noise does is it tries to create an even distribution on the mesh, but not looking like mathematical, like an organically even distribution. It's quite lovely. All right, so now that we got our points, let's make some tubes, tube-like things. So complex curve forms are called strands. So we're gonna say strands, strands along normals. Don't know what a normal is, but it's okay. This, and now we got our furs. We can add, and usually doing this, you're gonna need a lot of them. So let's just start with 15,000, something like so. I'm going to grab my underlying cylinder, maybe make it a little smaller. All right, so then I also want to get this ready to render, so I'm gonna get Arnold strand settings, and this will let me render them as, if we can come over here, as ribbons or oriented so ribbons, like you can twist them around and they're flat. Tubes are more like cylinders. That's what we want. And we're also going to create a shader. Material, assign material. I'm just chaining this up. And we need our trusty, get rid of all these. Create material, standard surface. So I've seen a lot of things in class that are fongs and other stuff, and it just doesn't look as good. Standard surface is the one we want. And assign material, we're gonna do this into our surface material. And we're almost ready to see our first render. I could set up a whole lighting thing. I'm gonna do something, just a little cheat. I'm gonna go lights, sky dome light, and then I'm gonna plug in a HDRI, which is captured lighting from on set. You can see that there. And I'm going to use this to light my scene. So, and before I do anything, I always want to increment and save because you never know what's going to happen. And go. And it looks a little like a carpet at the moment, which is not totally unexpected, like a shag carpet kind of thing. If we want it to be a little bit more fur-like, we could add some variation to the profile of our little tubes here. So I'm going to say set SSP, set strand profile, put it right here. And I'm going to have them kind of taper out like so. Also going to boost the exposure a little bit and hide. I don't want to see this light in the background. A little distracting. So in my light. There we go. Under camera. So these are all the different rays that are operating in the scene, and I just turn the camera to 0. So like it still emits diffuse. It still emits specular and all this other stuff. But from the point of view of the camera, I don't want to see anything. All right, and then I'm also going to make it a little thinner. There we go. It's starting to look more furry. Going to add some variation to the length. And to do that, I'm going to add a resize strand node. Put it near the beginning. Add some randomization. Add a little variation to this. No, I can make these a little longer if I want. All right, and then we have our material, which at the moment is just default, and we want to give it a name. And maybe make it white and add some subsurface, because fur is can be very translucent and soft. All right, and let's just clear this, and we can just keep going, but you get the idea. It's so soft now. Right, it's not shiny at all. But the material itself is still like super simple. It's just there's a lot more complexity to the geometry. All right, so soft. Maybe I'll boost the light a little more too. In here. All right.